Welcome to GNCC Espresso Live. My name is Mishka Balzam, and I'm going to be your host and moderator for the next hour. What is the purpose of this dialogue? Over the past few weeks, we have been connecting twice a week via this webinar format to have a discussion about COVID-19 programs, subsidies available to businesses, and addressing urgent questions critical to the sustainability of organizations, as well as the overall impact on communities Niagara-wide. By looking at how economies across the world have been impacted, how international affairs and foreign politics are being redefined, our world has been fundamentally changed in the way we will work, how we gather, travel, learn, and live. It is important for us to come together for live conversations, to stretch our minds, to not only clarify how COVID-19 is impacting our communities, but also the decisions that we need to make to minimize its negative impact on our cities. After all, we're in this together. What we know for sure is that our number one priority will continuously be the slowdown of the virus, which can only happen when we follow the advice from provincial and local health authorities, along with key federal departments and agencies. We are encouraged by the innovation and creativity shown by businesses that have been able to adapt the operational model to online and alternate methods of delivering services and goods, and the examples are plentiful. Equally, the spirit of generosity and support of the frontline workers and those most vulnerable in our community has shown Niagara at its best, a place we're proud to call home. This week, today, we are extremely fortunate to be joined by Thorold Mayor Terry Ugolini and St. Catharines Mayor Walter Sendzik to give us a glimpse into their cities, an inside view of how this crisis has impacted their municipality and what tomorrow might look like. Mayor Ugolini and Mayor Sendzik, thank you for joining us. Before we get started, as you can see, we're utilizing Zoom technology. Participants are currently on mute, but we encourage and want to have interaction and dialogue. It's critical. If you have questions, there are two options for you. You will see on the right-hand side of your screen the symbol of a hand. By clicking that, we know that you want to ask a question and we will unmute you. Please watch for it. The second option is there's an option called chat. It's usually indicated at the bottom of your screen, and a field will appear on the right-hand side of your screen as well, where you can type in questions. We, the panelists, can see those questions and we will do our best to get to them. Lastly, we had a number of questions that came in via social media or email, and we'll start with one of them now. And Mayor Ugolini, maybe if I can add by starting out with you. In the past 6 weeks, we have heard much about the difficult decisions that many businesses had to make, temporarily closing their door, layoff of staff, redefining their complete business model, all in an effort to stabilize the organization, their cash flow during these COVID-19 times. Can you give our listeners and attendees today a glimpse inside your City Hall, the decisions that you had to make when it comes to service delivery, city operations, staffing levels, and more? Mayor Ugolini, the mic is all yours.
Thank you so much, Mishka. Well, we started by offering some incentives to businesses in our community as well as residents. That's the waiving of late fees and penalties through June 30th. No penalty on water sewer bills, no penalty on current year taxes, no NSF fees for return payments, no interest on accounts receivable invoices, and no shut-off water services for non-payment during this period. As well, we've worked closely with the region and all 12 municipalities to form the Niagara Economic Rapid Response Team, which is important because we're all working together and to ensure that all local businesses receive timely, responsive support. And I think this initiative is extremely important because it, again, shows that the Niagara region as a whole can come together and work close together when we have to. Personally, on my own, as far as what I'm doing at City Hall and at home is working closely with businesses, find out what their needs are, and find out what we can do as a conduit to upper levels of government to make sure they get the access to programs that are available. We're also in the process of finalizing a hiring of our economic development manager because we believe this is going to be a key position moving forward. to help businesses to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're working extremely hard on that. The other thing we're doing within the state is we're making sure it's business as usual as far as our operations, especially in the planning building department. We want to make sure that all projects that are submitted are ready to go, and we'll be able to issue permits as soon as the restrictions are lifted. So we're working hard to make sure we work with businesses and developers to make sure that we will not be a roadblock moving forward when the restrictions are lifted. And I think that's an important aspect. On a staffing level at the city, we had to make some tough choices. And so what we've done is we've been able to maintain our full-time crews. But we won't be hiring casuals and students this summer, which hurts unless things change. And with our full-time crews, we have the flexibility to move people around and get the jobs done that need to be done. And we're working closely. Everybody's working as a team. We work closely with the union, and it's been amazing how everybody's come together. Look at I think we'll still be able to maintain a good level of service because certain activities aren't running, like our recreational activities. And but we're hoping as restrictions get lifted and we bring recreational activities online, we'll be able again to increase our staffing levels. But as of right now, we have to make those tough decisions.
And those are tough choices, and they're very difficult choices, especially when we're talking about people and the impact it has on people. I want to congratulate you and the rest of the NAGA team for your rapid response team and the work that they've done. I think one of the things that the business community has found very important was actually the survey that came out. We had 2,600 businesses that participated in it, wanted to give voice of what they're going through. And so for your team, for all the municipalities in the region to pull this together, I think was very, very, very important. And it's good for us because we often on the outside don't see what happens behind the doors at City Hall. So I really appreciated you going over that, and especially also committing to the services and being ready for when actually business can ignite again, especially when it comes to developers and the construction industry. Mayor Sendzik, same question over to you. Give us a glimpse of what the last 6-8 weeks have looked like for you, for your colleagues, and how it has impacted your operation.
Thanks, Mishka. And I just want to start by acknowledging that today is National Day of Mourning, and it's for fallen workers across the country, people who have unfortunately lost their lives due to workplace incidences. And so in St. Catharines, Niagara, we do have a number of places where people can go to pay their respects. And so I just want to acknowledge that, because the business community and the workers that work for the businesses are really important. And it also highlights the crisis that we're in today, how many frontline workers are putting their health at risk by doing what they're doing. And so it does magnifies the importance of this National Day of Mourning. And I also want to thank the GNCC for putting these programs together. I think right from the very beginning, the GNCC has been on top of the getting the information to the businesses as quickly as possible. You have a robust organization that is able to really connect the businesses, whether you're an entrepreneur or a large scale business, with the government programs that are being developed. So your information ability and the reach that you have is quite impressive. And so keep up the great work on that. In terms of where we are as a community, I think Terry has been able to articulate that from Thorold's perspective very, very well. There is no game book on this, and so nobody has a book that they can pull off the shelf and say, how are we going to manage this crisis? And so as a community, as a city, we were one of the first cities to immediately shut down our operations in order to be a part of pushing back at COVID-19. And with that came a lot of what would be challenges on a financial level. But really, we wanted to protect our community, and we wanted to protect our workforce. And so that was first and foremost in our minds. The economic impact is going to be significant. And there's been questions asked previously about what is the city doing when businesses are laying off people. Well, we've gone down that road as well as a city, as a corporation. We are just like any other larger business in the region, and so we've had to adjust our workforce. These aren't easy decisions that our CAO has had to make, and I think our CAO Shelley Chemnitz has done an outstanding job leading the leadership team through this crisis. She has stepped up as a leader, someone who has intimate knowledge of how corporations, how cities function, and so we've had to make some tough decisions. Like Terry was talking about, being able to extend things on the property taxes, water bills, extend the deferrals out there to reduce the financial burden today, but recognizing that we are going to face a financial burden as well. So we're making adjustments on a daily basis. There is no magic number at the end of this right now. I'm on the Large Urban Mayors Caucus. We just had a conference call this morning with Minister Clark. The provincial government has indicated they will be at the table in partnership with the municipalities to get us through these challenges. I've been impressed with Premier Ford, and I've been impressed with the Prime Minister Trudeau and the efforts that they've put into this. You can really see that we're all working together. But I think the fiscal reality will present itself later into the fall, depending on what the new norm looks like. But today, it's just managing the best we can in the circumstances that we're facing, making sure that our citizens have the services, the essential services that are required, such as clean water. We want to make sure that people understand that in order for the water to come out of your tap, a lot of the services that are being provided are from a city or town. And so these are the sort of critical times that we're dealing with, Mishka. But the reality is that the adjustments that are being made in the best interests of our city, and at the same time understanding the fiscal reality that's going to be facing us in the months to come.
Yeah, absolutely right, Mayor Sendzik. There is no playbook when it comes to this topic, and I think that we are going to be faced with more of the financial reality as we're moving into the fall. But let's look at something that has been close to your heart, Mayor Sendzik, and that has been public transportation, just one of the services. Buses, public transportation will likely need infusions of cash to keep the system solvent when ridership is low. And when we're open again for business, adjustments likely need to be made to prevent spread of infectious diseases. We're likely also, when we look at infrastructure, are going to be faced with having to look at the amount of traffic on streets, sidewalks, and in other arenas, sporting facilities, and so on. What are some of the adjustments that you're foreseeing, and what do you think some of the impacts will be to citizens and communities? Mayor Sendzik?
Yeah, that's a pretty broad-ranging question. It starts with transit, and transit is an essential service, and so we want to make sure that the revenue hole that we're facing today through transit, and we have significant transit providers here in Niagara and Welland, St. Catharines, and Niagara Falls. We provide transit services to Thorold. We're facing some significant financial pressures when it comes to the loss of revenue. So we'll be working with our provincial counterparts, looking at the gas tax, looking at a long-term investment strategy into transit to allow that certainty, because I don't believe that we're going to be able to address the shortfalls in just 1 year. I think there's going to be a time to get people used to taking transit again. There has to be a new way of looking at transit, like you said, Mishka. How do we protect the driver? But how do we give the confidence to the person who's taking public transit that the precautions are in place to protect them moving forward? So there's going to be a cost to all of that. And in our conversations with the provincial government and with the federal government around the gas taxes, that we're looking for some cost certainty or some financial certainties around the investments in transit that will allow us to continue to provide that essential service. That being said, when it comes to the other facilities that you touched on, we'll be taking our directions from public health. And that's going to be an important message that the public needs to understand, is that when it comes time to opening up these facilities, and Terry and I were talking about the outdoor swimming pools, when it comes to looking at those as we move forward, they're going to be fully informed by public health. So there's going to be new procedures put in place. There's going to be new regulations established, and everything that we do will be informed by how do we best protect our community, and how are we using the latest information being provided by all levels of public health, whether it's Dr. Tam at the federal level, all the way down to Dr. Hergy here in the region. These aren't going to be simple solutions. And as many people have talked about, you just don't hit a switch and go, everything's open again. It's going to take a lot of planning. And, in St. Catharines, we have Market Square. We've talked about opening up Market Square in the next couple of weeks. But the reason why we started to talk about it now is so that the public understand what it's going to take to actually get it going again. Working with public health, working with the vendors, working with the city staff. It may take 4 weeks to get it to a place where public health says, yes, you have the right precautions put in place. It'll take time. And I think with anything that the city or business does, whether you're a restaurant or your manufacturer or your city, it's going to take time to put those processes in place. So I think as the public becomes more aware of the efforts that the cities and businesses are going through, they'll be more, one, confident that the precautions are actually going to be protective of them and staff. Two is they'll be more aware of what the horizon looks like. Right now, no one has an eye on the horizon because we don't know for certainty what the new normal is going to look like.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate your input on it. I actually think it's going to be so complex to open up schools again, to open up public facilities again, and the details that we need to consider as we're moving forward, especially in the months to come. Mayor Ugolini, for you, the same question. The question was about public transportation on the one side of it, buses and others, but at the same time also taking a look at our streets and our roads where we gather and where people cross by each other. Right now, we keep a safe distance of 2 meters. But what will it look like? What do you foresee for Thorold? How are you planning for it? Give us a little bit of your insight of what it looks like.
Okay, I'll start with. I'm still muted here. Once. Hello.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. I'll start with transit. We purchased our transit from St. Catharines Transit, and we work closely with them. And they give us ridership numbers, usage, safety issues as related to COVID-19. And we follow them and work closely with them. One thing, though, that we have to understand is a lot of essential workers are using public transit to get to work. Mm-hmm. And we have to be cognizant of that and make sure that whatever we do, we still maintain a level of service that allows them to get to work to provide the services that everybody needs. Regarding the gas tax, we've been working closely with MP Vance Badaway on an initiative. If you remember last year, they doubled the gas tax, and that was great for municipalities. We're working hard and really lobbying to get that done again this year in the short term, so that we work closely to the long-term vision to rebranding the gas tax and incorporating it in such a way that gives more flexibility to the municipality. So that's on the transit side. As far as our operations go, we're having discussions right now on what it will look like to get City Hall moving and back to normal and how we're going to do that in a safe manner. And Mayor Sendzik touched on the most important issue, and that is the health and safety of the public and our employees. And anything we do will be driven by the province and public health at the region. And there's going to need to be checks and balances in place. And we need to be prepared to react to any condition that comes up because it's a flowing landscape. It changes every day. So recreation facilities, that's going to be a challenge because the thing that I'm worried about is that we start opening up things and people think we're back to normal. And that is a concern I have that I hope that we'll be able to control and with strong messaging and to make sure that people understand as we gradually open things up, we still have to maintain social distancing and other initiatives. Regarding the other issue you brought up is very interesting to me because I spent a lot of time thinking about complete streets and active transportation. And we may go down a road because of COVID-19 where we accelerate that. and make our communities more not only walkable, bikeable, but accessible for all types of transportation. So that might be a good that comes out of this. So those are some of the ways that we're looking at it, but it's going to be long discussions and very well laid out plans as to we gradually open the city based on the recommendations of public health in the province.
I agree. There have been a lot of interesting discussions of what maybe the future cities will look like to accommodate the needs of all people. And there's some really interesting models. And it's good for us. You're right, Mayor Ugolini. I think out of all crises, actually lots of good things come out of it. But sometimes we don't know what it is yet. But it does take our collective input, our innovation, and our courage to actually saying we need to, and we're going to look at it differently. We are encouraged by both the direction of the federal and provincial government and the local health authorities with being actually cautious in opening it up not too soon. One of the questions we were recently asked actually was if there was a lot of pressure that we heard from our members, from our businesses to open up again and to open up quickly. And interestingly enough, this is not the message we're hearing. The message we hear from businesses is that they want to open up and it's safe to open up. And that I think is very encouraging to come from the Niagara business community saying that they want to open up so that we continuously can stay open up and we don't have to close again and go through this again. So it's good to get a pulse on that specific question too. But, and this is a question that has come forward and it's to both of you. We're in the midst of a massive experiment called remote work. Most of your colleagues, most of all of our colleagues are working remotely. And possibly some organizations might find it more effective in the long term. What can municipalities do to support a remote workforce to make them feel connected to cities, towns, and to vital parts of their community, as this is likely going to change? Mayor Ugolini, do you want to take this one first, and then we'll pass the mic on to Mayor Sendzik?
Well, I think the thing you have to look at here is what you're experiencing in the business community. A lot of businesses that didn't have an online presence had to adjust quickly and make changes to their business model. I think from a municipal standpoint, we have to make sure that we have the latest technology to allow us to be able to assist business and provide seamless a seamless situation where they can work with the city and make applications and do a lot of business online. We're not there yet. We've improved drastically and we've come a long way. We improved our website. We're constantly allowing more bills to be paid online and different applications, but we're not where we need to be, and we're working hard to get there. So I think our end is if we're going to work with business and they make an effort to do that, we have to make sure that we on our end are doing the same thing. And I think that it's going to be something that we're going to make a priority, and we're going to work to make sure that we make business as easy as possible for businesses. And that's a goal that I think because of this, we have to accelerate, no question.
And this has been interesting because it's not just in our dealings with municipalities and getting permits and others, but we're now actually looking at and saying like, what actually service can we move online instead of making people to come down. But I'm so amazed by looking at the medical field and saying that in the past we had to go in to get our prescription, we had to see them, and now we're looking at a number of different options of saying maybe we don't need to do this, maybe there's different ways. And so we're seeing it in all sectors within our community because it's not an isolated issue. It's not only a health issue. It's not only economic one. It's not only a municipal one, and all levels. We're all being impacted by it and are looking at service delivery differently. And it's encouraging. I find it encouraging, and we need to support the businesses while doing that. Mayor Sendzik, on the same question.
All right. And again, I agree with what Terry, Mayor of Thorold, has said earlier about complete streets. I think if we want to really seriously look at working from home and remote workplaces, we have to look at how we're designing our communities moving forward. So I think what this pandemic has shown us, with a lot of people staying home and staying safe, is they're exploring their own neighborhood a lot more. So we want to make sure, and I think this is going to be a goal, and we have it as part of our strategic plan of building complete neighborhoods. It's already been in our strategic plan. So I think enhancing that by looking at neighborhoods and working with neighborhood associations to identify how do we better build our community to be a complete community, so that if people are working from home, they also have the opportunity to explore the green space in their neighborhoods. They also have an opportunity to use bike lanes or trails as a means to release some of the pressures that our people do face when you do remote work remotely. What this has really shown us, Mishka, is that a lot of the isolation issues that are presenting themselves come from the lack of connectivity, not just the connectivity with their friends and family, but the connectivity with their surroundings, the nature, the landscape that surrounds neighborhoods. And so and I do believe that there will be a greater percentage of businesses that look to online as part of the remote workspace, as part of a working environment. What cities need to do is invest in the actual neighborhoods that make up cities. And so what does that look like? I think that'll be influenced by neighborhood associations like the Queenston Street Neighborhood Association or the Fitzgerald Neighborhood Street Association, the Port Dalhousie Beautification and Works Committee. They'll be able to help influence us, and also the people who are experiencing the work from home concept about how do we build and design better neighborhoods. And you could be in a 150-year-old neighborhood, or you can be in a neighborhood that was just recently designed 10 years ago. And what improvements can we make so that your experience in your home, as both home office and place in which you live, is going to be a healthy place that surrounds you as well.
And integration of both. There's so much closer integration of work and life that we have. There is actually, while we're on this topic, this next question seems to be at the perfect time, actually. And both of you have invested a tremendous amount in revitalizing the downtowns of your communities. But at the same time, restaurants, bars, specialty shops, and others are under severe economic pressure right now. Some projections suggest percentage I don't even want to mention that might not survive this current crisis. That will change our downtowns for a long time, likely can change it. What can you do? What can we do as a community to protect those unique areas in our community and make sure that they're continually a vital part of that, which is the pulse and the heart of our cities? And maybe Mayor Sendzik, if you want to take this one before I pass it on to Mayor Urbina.
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest driver of the economic revival of our community. Our city is going to be the revival of downtown St. Catharines. And, as a community, we've spent upwards of $300 million just in our downtown. Like that's $300 million that has been spent in the downtown over the last 10 plus years. And the impact that this pandemic is causing on the businesses, the entrepreneurs, the restaurants, the retailers, in addition to the Performing Arts Center and the Meridian Center, is massive. And we can throw big numbers. The number's big. And how do you design a plan of recovery? And so Brian York, who's head of our economic development office, he's been charged with developing the recovery plan for the city. And that is going to be a key component of it. So I guess I'll leave, don't want to take up too much time, but one of the areas that we'll be looking at is continuing to support the arts. The arts is what has redefined our downtown, and making sure that we're not leaving anybody behind. And the arts community has to be one that we continue to invest in, and even invest more in, because they're the ones that'll take, the artists and the artist-run companies are the ones that are going to take the biggest brunt of this downturn, because the loss of sponsorship, the loss of donor dollars, the loss of performance space, all of this is going to have a cascading impact on the vibrancy of our downtown. And so, I'll be looking forward to the economic development recovery plan that Brian's putting together, and it's going to be influenced by members of the business community and the arts community. But there is a roadmap, Mishka. I think we have the infrastructure. And once we get out of this and get onto a new norm and have new habits that are formed, I think the downtown will come back, and it'll come back in a very vibrant and energetic way. But it's going to be a challenge for a lot of folks. Let's not dance around that. It's going to be a challenge for a lot of folks, and we just got to make sure that all levels of government are there to continue to invest in the businesses, the entrepreneurs, the arts, so that we don't get into a place of stagnation that really takes away from all the great energy that we had just before the pandemic started.
Yeah. Downtowns in cities across Niagara are such a heartbeat for the community. And I think Mayor Sendzik, you're right. The arts and entertainment industry and the accommodation and services or tourism sector is going to be so significantly impacted by this. And that tourism sector feeds the restaurants, feeds the arts and entertainment that are part. They're also closely linked. One of the things that I think is coming forward is the need for more industry-specific support. I know there have been very many broad subsidies put in place at rapid speed, and they've been greatly appreciated by the business community. But there's sector-specific needs because some sectors will be harder hit and differently hit than the impact on other industries. Mayor Oglini, you have a beautiful Thorold downtown with a tremendous amount of investment put into the streets in downtown and the vibrancy offered. It's remarkable the turnaround that we are experiencing in Thorold, but now there is a crisis. It will impact it. It will impact individual businesses. How are you dealing with it? What are your thoughts on what's going to happen to Thorold's downtown?
Well, any downtown right now is really feeling the pinch because of the type of businesses, retail shops, hair salons, restaurants. They've been really, really impacted. What we're doing in the city of Thorold is we've come a long way in our downtown. In fact, in 2017, we won the Prince of Wales Prize for Municipal Heritage Leadership, and that's like winning the Oscar. And we were really trying to leverage that. So what we're doing is our biggest project in the city of Thorold this year is the downtown. Our biggest capital project was to redo the streets, sidewalks, curbs, new sewers, new water lines, all down Front Street. That project's closed and it's coming to council on May 5th. Our goal is to still do this project. This is the time to do this project because the downtown's going to be coming back. It will come back, but it's a slow process. So now's the time to get this work done when it's least disruptive so that when things get back to normal, the downtown is in tip-top shape, ready to go, and we can really leverage that moving forward. As well as that, another project we had planned, which is associated with the downtown, is the Battle of Beaver Dams Park revitalization. Because our long-term plan was to really keep driving and revitalization of downtown and keep that moving forward. I think as part of the process moving forward, the best thing we can do to help business downtown is to stay on course, stay on plan, and not kick this down the road. I think we really have to address it. And then as things progress and we get into post-COVID-19, we'll be better positioned to not only move forward, but to help our businesses.
Thank you very much on that. We have a question from one of our attendees, and the question is, any comments on the opening of daycares? And this has been an interesting question, especially in Europe, as they're opening some of their doors and breaking down some of the barriers that they have. Any comments on that particular one? Mayor Oglini, if you want to take it, or Mayor Sendzik, any thoughts on it?
I haven't really put much thought into this, but I think that this is something that's closely related to how you're going to open schools. How are you going to be able to function and maintain social distancing and keep everybody safe and healthy? And I think that that's an issue best addressed through public health. And I think that they'll be the driver of the recommendations for daycares moving forward. And because as people get back to work, they're going to, the daycares are going to be an essential part of that movement forward.
I think I agree with you. I think it will be closely tied to the opening of elementary schools, high schools, and other areas of it, and ensuring that a workforce is supported to go back to work, whatever that back to work looks like. As we have seen at other levels of government, time is of the essence. Clear for business and entrepreneurship will be crucial to our economic recovery. Is the time right now right to harmonize some of the permits and the fees across Niagara, reduce some of the times it takes to get approvals of 2 levels of government, and the time it takes to do this? Maybe change the time instead of months to mere days to ensure that when the doors open up, we can actually, the economy and business are ready to move forward. Do you see any opportunities in working in this 2-tiered system where we can reduce some red tape, some time limits and others to make it easier for businesses to move forward? Mayor Sendzik?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one that we've been in discussions with the Home Builders Association, the Niagara Construction Association, looking at ways and means to streamline the approval process. We at the City of St. Catharines have a pre-consultation that our planning department has with prospective developments that will be taking place. In that pre-consultation would include the region as well, and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority if it is in land that is adjacent to or abutting for conservation property. So we're already moving down that. And what you're hearing around regional council, and I know Terry's been a big advocate of this, is making sure that the streamlining that's taking place isn't done on an ad hoc basis. It's got to be done through policies and procedures. And what we've seen over the last year or so prior to the COVID-19 is the region really defining what spaces it needs to be in from an approval process and allowing the municipalities to really take a stronger handle on the planning approvals. I know I've been pushing, making sure that the region is not overstepping its approval process. We've been pushing through our economic development office, making sure that our own approvals, that we are sticking to the timelines and setting targets on making sure permits are being approved by a specific date. We've retooled our office in terms of inspections through the planning department, making sure that from a planning perspective that the inspections are being done in a more efficient way. I don't want to say expedited because there is legal responsibilities that municipalities have when it comes to inspections, but expediting the inspections is something that we're pushing for. And when I look at it, Mishka, when we look at the partnerships that we're developing with the home builders and the Niagara Construction Association and other agencies, what we're aiming to do is utilize the best in technology. And so I think what this pandemic is teaching us is how can we look at our approaches on, say, inspections and use technology like video technology to enhance the inspection process. So instead of going out and inspecting a driveway footing or a backyard shed, why can't we use this kind of technology to allow the contractor or the home builder, when I say home builder, the do-it-yourselfer, why can't we have this kind of inspection taking place instead of the process of having a person fill out a form, get in a car, drive somewhere, walk about a certain structure, make some notes, come back in their car, go back to the office, and then stamp an approval. I think one of the silver linings that's coming out of the pandemic, hopefully, is our trust in technology. And if our inspectors and our planning department, and if they can, and I'm not talking just about St. Catharines, but across the board, if they can develop that level of trust in the technology, then I think we can expedite a whole bunch of less complex inspections, freeing up time for the inspectors to actually go and do the large scale projects that we don't want to be falling behind, because every day is a day that is costing the developer money. So that's the long and short of it, is that we are making the efforts and they are being recognized by the associations. But I think we can do a lot more utilization of technology coming out of COVID-19.
I think you're right, actually, especially when you look at the usage of technology and innovation that is there. And if that is combined with the political will to reduce red tape and to expedite some processes, I think we're in a really good position. Mayor Glini, on the same question, what do you foresee?
Well, the area CAOs are currently working, all municipalities in the region are currently working together on opportunities to streamline service delivery. And there's going to be a report that's going to come to the local municipalities as well as the region. And at that time, we need to have a healthy debate and address the recommendations. This initiative come out as a direct result of the regional governance review. Now, when the province basically stepped aside, they didn't step aside to say that this is done. They stepped aside to throw it in our laps and say, now deal with this issue. What are you going to do to be proactive and improve things? So this is going to be one initiative that we're working on that I think will deliver good results. And building on what Mayor Sendzik said, at our local level, and I think that's important. We do things in the planning building at the local level that we do well. And the region does things like growth projections and those type of issues, which they do well. And I think that as we move forward, I think that we continue to move and improve our systems. I know in the city of Thorold, we had a lot of issues because of the huge growth. We couldn't keep up with the growth. And now we've started to hire people and manage that. And we made a commitment that when COVID-19 hit, we're not taking a step back. We got to keep going, and we have to make sure that we get everything in place, and all submissions that come in, we deal with them and deal with the development and building, so that when we get out of this and we'll be ready to issue permits. We'll be ready to help the development community and move projects forward, because I think that's the best thing we can do as a municipality to help kickstart the economy. So those are some things that we're doing.
I think the businesses are looking for the support of all levels of government. And we have seen the provincial and federal government making decisions we never thought in beforehand. Who would have thought 3 months ago that you can pick up and buy a wine at a restaurant and you take it out, and all those kind of things, or pick up and delivery of so many of the services that are there. So we're encouraged by, and businesses are encouraged by, the speed in which decisions are being made, and the commitment to it's really addressing the issue and saying we can actually overcome this. Just because, and it does not need to take maybe as long of a time as what we had expected in beforehand. So I think business are probably sometimes known to be impatient when it comes to it. So any commitment that comes when it looks at the time frame that some of those processes will take, I think that business would greatly appreciate it. There's a question that has come in from Stacy, and it's regarding our area has a lot of call centers. And how going forward do we safely put 100, 500 people in one room and keep the virus in check? And I think it's a valid concern that probably a lot of businesses, a lot of individuals have. And I think Mayor Sendzik, we had the expansion of some call centers in St. Catharines recently. Both cities have been impacted by it. Would you like to address this one?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a question that I would best leave to the experts. I think Canadian Tire Financial is one of the leading customer care centers that not only we have here in Niagara, but they're recognized across the country for their level of engagement with their staff and their ability to build a very strong work environment. We also have Sitel, and we also have Accenture, which has had their offices and continues to have their offices in Thorold, and now we have them in downtown St. Catharines. But I think what you're going to see, Mishka, is they are going to be modifying their business structures as they see fit. I do know, and I do know personally, the people who are managing these facilities, and they have the best interest of their workers in mind. And so, it's important that a member of the public is asking the question about how to best protect them. But I know that from a corporate perspective, that those workers will be protected, and they all understand the value of humans and human capital. And so I have the utmost confidence that they will continue to manage their businesses in the best way as we move towards a new norm.
I agree with you, and I'm aware that a lot of the call centers already have the technology to support people working from home too. So we might likely not see them all gathering in the same place, but rather working remotely and being set up for this. But just prior to this question, we talked about how the municipalities are working together. And one of the key great examples of how Niagara municipalities in the region have worked together is when we look at the Canada Summer Games. GoTourn is another one. But this particular question has come in. It's asking, how do you think COVID-19 will impact the Canada Summer Games next year? Mayor Ugolini, all municipalities are part of this initiative. We're proud that the games are coming to Niagara. What will it look like for the games?
Well, I think that at this point in time, it's hard to project what things are going to be like over a year from now. So what happens as far as the Canada Games is you have a national committee and a national Canada Games committee that works in conjunction with our local Canada Games committee. And I'm sure that between those two committees, they'll come up with a plan on a safe delivery of the games, whether that is next summer or later. I mean, that remains to be seen. There's a lot of unknowns. We know that moving forward, there's going to be, we have to see how things progress. Are we able to not get a second spike? Are we able to develop drugs that can alleviate any symptoms related to COVID-19? But the bottom line is, and what everybody's waiting for is the development of a safe vaccine. And so all those things, we don't know. You know, we hope over a year from now that that's all in place and everything transpires, but it's a tough question to answer at this point in time.
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult one. Mayor Sendzik?
I think you should just have another espresso cafe with Doug Hamilton and Steve Katzman and Victoria Whitson. I agree with Terry. This is, you know, from the project, the legacy project that's being built in partnership with Thorold, Brock, and the Niagara region. That was ahead of schedule prior to March, whatever 17th, when they closed down the construction for the site. So, will we be able to catch up on that construction schedule? There's a whole bunch of variables that come into play there. So, from our perspective, and this is what we want the public to understand, is that we're following that project very closely. We have a consortium agreement that's in place. We're all managing the project to the best of the abilities of the contractor, Aquacon. And what we want to make sure is that any decision that's being made by Canada Summer Games is in conjunction with the ability of that legacy park to be open and ready for what is arguably going to be one of the biggest events in 2021. And I agree with Terry. We'll be taking our direction from the Canada Summer Games. I think that's a better question to ask of them as you move forward.
Yeah, and I think this direction will likely come from a provincial and federal level too. It's more complex of what we have, but it's been so interesting how we've seen the impact on the Summer Olympics this year. We've looked at festivals that have changed. We look all around the world where things are changing, and yeah, we're going to keep our eyes on this one specifically. This is an interesting question because it's looking at this upcoming one. It's looking at maybe some of the things that we could ask of the federal and provincial governments. And so one of the things is whenever we have seen being in a recession or downturns in the economy, federal and provincial governments have often focused on infrastructure investments at the local level to kind of ignite the economy again. In Niagara, we have ever growing infrastructure backlog, but we also have other priorities and opportunities. In the past, we often talked about affordable housing as being one key factor of it. If you could have an ask, if the federal and provincial governments are going to invest in infrastructure, what would be your asks for your community that you think to be our number one priority? Mayor Ugolini, do you want to take this first?
Yeah, we've had a number of projects that we've submitted as a municipality that are important for our community that we're going to have to invest in. And we've submitted those, and we submitted them to both levels of government so they know, what our priorities are. But I told you we're doing the Front Street project. We're working in conjunction with the city of St. Catharines on St. David's Road. Because of the growth in the city, our operations center needs to be redone and expanded. So that is a real top priority project, and as well as a replacement of Fire Station 1, Battle of Beaver Dams Park. We worked with different groups on affordable housing initiatives. So those are important initiatives, and probably more important than ever before coming out of COVID-19. So, I mean, the wish list is long, and we're submitting, and we're also submitting to understand that, and everybody knows that municipalities cannot run deficits. So we are going to be in a position where we're going to work with upper levels of government to make sure that we're not in a bad position, because everything depends on our taxes coming in. And that's the big unknown at this time. How many people are going to defer their taxes? So those are issues that we deal with. There's also been increased pressures put on the region and the municipalities as far as police and bylaw enforcement due to COVID-19. And that's and public health. Public health is huge, the amount of extra dollars that have been spent there. So those are all areas that we need to address. And it sounds like a huge wish list, and it is. But if we can get help in certain areas, that alleviates pressure so that we can spend money in other areas.
Yeah, I think it's critical. Thank you very much. Mayor Sendzik?
Yeah, number one priority is housing. It was housing before the crisis. It's going to be a housing coming out of the crisis. So we have a housing action plan at the City of St. Catharines. We have a number of housing projects that are in development that we want to have ground broken as soon as we come out of this. We have significant tracts of property in certain areas of our city that need brownfield redevelopment. That will also include housing on those developments. So, for us, it's working with our federal and provincial counterparts to make sure that the funding is available that had been there previously around housing. So the feds had a national housing strategy. We want to make sure that there's the commitment there to continue to invest in housing. As the chair of Niagara Regional Housing, there's a number of projects that we have across the region that we're looking for additional funding to accelerate the growth of that. The region has its long-term care strategy, and I think if we've learned anything from this current situation that we're facing is the importance of long-term care and making sure that we have the right approaches to long-term care. So we have some very significant projects that are about to get underway at the region that will increase the capacity, but also create safer spaces for the older adults, the elderly in our community. And in addition to that is intermunicipal transit. It's part of our municipal agenda, and it's part of our regional agenda to amalgamate the transit systems, but that's going to require some federal and provincial investments as well. So these are all community building initiatives that are going to create jobs in the short term for the construction, but also create more complete and vibrant communities in the long term. So we'll be continuing to work on those, Mishka, and I know the GNCC has been a big supporter of those files.
Yeah, they're critical to our community. I'm glad to hear the word of infrastructure backlog is always important to support all businesses and flow, but also to hear affordable housing being mentioned again as being a critical consideration. You both are leaders in your community who have a really good understanding of the businesses. You're closely connected with them, you connect with businesses regularly. You have a sense of the pulse in your community of what businesses need. Are you hearing anything in the community of where people are saying, this is what the provincial and federal government have offered us, but we also need other things? Are there any things that are being left out that you currently feel like they're not being addressed, they're not helping businesses. In some cases, what we have heard from individuals is that some announcements are being made and the details are missing or they're coming later. That's one critical one. The commercial rent relief was announced. There are some hurdles with what we know so far on this project, in part of who can apply and so on. But is there anything else that you feel like needs to be done to support businesses more, to ensure that the longevity of businesses in your community? Mayor Sendzik?
Yeah, and that's the million-dollar question. And from day one, we've been on the phone working with our local business community, understanding their pressure points. And I think, you know, that the survey itself was designed by Samir and Brian York, and it was designed specifically to extract the kind of data that you're seeing now. I think it's the, if I can position it this way, is that there's the very short-term reactive government approach, which is needed, which is the employment benefits, which is extending benefits for entrepreneurs, which is getting dollars that can be allocated to rent to offset the pressures being faced by landlords. Like these are all real-time pressures that are being addressed. But then there's the longer term, the longer horizon of, you know, when we get out of this, what is going to be the needs of business, say 6 months down the road, and trying to get a sight line on that is really probably one of the most important things we can do as a city, and as, you know, Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce can do, is look at what the horizon is, so that there's a bit of an anticipation of what businesses are going to be required of to really get them back in business. Whether you're a large scale manufacturer like GM or you're a small restaurant like Oddbird, how do you create the conditions, and what are the programs going to look like? Because again, I don't think anyone is thinking that you're just going to turn a switch and the economy is going to be on. So I think the governments have done an outstanding job in the short term, addressing the immediate fiscal pressures that everybody's facing. But in the long term, what are the programs that are going to be required that build and enhance what the new business environment is going to look like? I don't have the answers to that, but what I'm looking at is trying to have the business community inform us of what the future could look like, and what are their future cost pressures or the pressure points going to be, and how do we mitigate them in policy development now, rather than waiting at the 6-month mark and going, oh, by the way, we need more money now, so can you help us now? So this is all the detailed work that's being done behind the scenes. And I would like to reiterate, I think the federal and provincial governments have done an outstanding job of meeting the needs of people as quickly as possible. This is the largest effort that goes back to the wartime effort. These are unprecedented times. So while some people may be critical of the efforts of government, I think we all have to recognize that everyone's just trying to move as quickly as possible, and at the same time being as responsible as possible. And those two sometimes gets confused, because if you move quickly without responsibility, then you get into trouble. But I think both levels of government, provincially and federally, have done an outstanding job.
Yeah, I agree. They've done an outstanding job. One of our attendees is actually making a very good point via chat here, indicating that some of the smaller businesses that have only, instead of hiring staff, had subcontracted people to help them out, they often fall through the cracks in all the things that are being offered by now, especially with the emergency relief benefits that are there. They can't apply for some of the grants and other things because they haven't had the staff, they had subcontractors. So there are certain areas that we are looking at and advocating on their behalf too. But I think it's critical for us to know that a lot of what has been done is so beneficial, yet there's specifics that we need to still support more. Mayor Ogling, on the same question, what are you hearing from your business community and what they need?
Everybody appreciates what the federal and provincial government has done. And to put these programs together in a short period of time, there's going to be areas that, loopholes that need to be closed. And I think they're responding to that. I think the big thing is anytime there's programs is to minimize restrictions so that the funding can flow out to the businesses in a timely fashion. And like this rent program, we still don't know all the logistics, but I'm hoping it's not going to be too cumbersome. One area that I have had some feedback on are sole proprietorships. Some of those businesses fall under the guidelines, and they're not able to access funding. So I've had some instances with sole proprietorships that had some concerns, and I put them in touch with Vance Badaway's office, and they're working hard to look at some of those issues and find ways that they might be able to expand the program. So it's just a matter of communicating what the pitfalls are, and dealing with the government's been more than receptive to adjust as they go along. So I'm hoping that moving forward, we'll be able to close some of those loopholes.
Yeah. They are exactly the loopholes that we hear about too, and we do all need to advocate on their behalf. We've come to the top of the hour. We're done. I'm going to give each of you maybe like a minute for some closing comments. Mayor Guglini, if you want to start out. Your volume, I can't hear you. No.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Sendzik mentioned at the top of the show, and I'm going to mention at the end of the show, I'd like to take a moment to mention that today is the National Day of Mourning, which seems even more relevant this year. And today we remember those killed, injured, or made ill in the workplace, and we renew our commitment to prevention. Reaching out to the community, I want to thank our community for staying the course. What we are doing together is working. We are seeing the results of these efforts. Please continue to follow the messaging. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And we will emerge stronger and more united than ever by staying together and working for the same goals. Thank you.
Yeah, I can only second that. Mayor Sendzik?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the GNCC for hosting this. This is a great opportunity to reach out to the business community. And the message to the business community is that, again, we're all in this together. We understand the struggles that businesses are facing. We understand the struggles that our residents are facing. But as Mayor Guglini said, we are doing this together, and we're going to get through it together. The goal is not to leave anybody behind and to meet our challenges head on. And while we continue to listen to public health and make sure we stay home and stay safe, recognize that all of your efforts have paid off, that we're seeing the numbers go down. And that's the direction that we want to go. But the idea that there is going to be a return to the normal that we experienced prior to COVID-19 is not the reality. And so we want to continue to work with the business community to work towards the new reality. And we want to continue to assure our community that we're doing the things to protect everybody in our community. And that's first and foremost on all of our minds. So I just want to thank everybody for their efforts to date, and recognize that we're going to continue to move forward together. And that's how we're going to continue to build a strong, resilient community, not just here in St. Catharines, but across the region.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you for being with us this morning. Both of you have mentioned it. We will get through this pandemic. We will go back to work in school and gather in restaurants and theaters and sports stadiums again. But when we do, municipalities and their leaders will not simply return to business as usual. And we're glad to hear this in today's dialogue, that there is really the political will to not do everything the same way that we have done it yesterday, but saying that we have to adjust and have to do it differently. Today's webinar has been recorded and will be available on our website, gncc.ca, and it will be emailed to all webinar participants directly. A few of you had mentioned some resources and questions have come up regarding subsidies. For a complete list, please check out our website. If you would like to reach out to us directly because you have some questions regarding any of the subsidies, please feel free to contact us at info@gncc.ca. And on Thursday of this week, same time at 10 o'clock, we are going to have a conversation with Fort Erie Mayor Redekop and Pelham Mayor Junkins. So please join us. We're looking forward to have you participate. And lastly, to all participants, thank you for joining us. Please stay in touch and above all, stay healthy. Thank you.